Hey, shalom, shalom, mishpocha. Welcome to another edition of Ray Bash's Ramblings. I'm your host, Rabbi Yehuda Ben Shomer. This is probably one of the most touchiest subjects in Messianic and Netzari and Jewish circles, period. And it's the pronunciation of the name. I'm not claiming that I know the exact pronunciation. Perfectly honest with you, I'm not sure that anybody at this point knows the exact pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton, the ineffable, the sacred name of Elohim. But at the same time, I'm not going to be pointing fingers or condemning anyone for saying the name as best as they can, as they're convinced of regarding their own personal studies, regarding Hebrew, regarding the name. People point out, well, what about the prohibition? Don't take the Lord's name in vain. The Lord's name is sacred, and even back in Israel's time, only the priest said the name. Well, there's really no evidence back in Moshe's time that was so. Now, we could safely say that during the time Yeshua walked the earth, and even in the first century, that the priests in the temple, they were the only ones who said the sacred name of God once a year during Yom Kippur. But if you read carefully the Brit Chadasha and read carefully the words of Yeshua, he said the sacred name. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of Jews got mad at him, is because he said the sacred name. So there's some evidence of that. The name, unfortunately, the pronunciation has been lost because the Hebrew has morphed and changed throughout the years. Similar to English, we no longer speak the King's English. We no longer speak Victorian or Elizabethan English. And English has changed and morphed over the years, just as there was ancient Hebrew and there's modern Hebrew. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences too. And I'm not going to go into that. I know there's a lot of good videos out there and a lot of good people who are convinced that it's pronounced this way or that way. And I used to be very apologetic because sometimes I would slip up and say the sacred name on one of these videos. Then I'd get tons of people saying, oh, you shouldn't do that, and get all offended and all mad. Well, I'm not going to apologize anymore because there's nothing wrong with it. Well, you're going to offend Jewish people and you're going to turn them away. Well, maybe so, but it's definitely not intentional, and I'm not going to go back and edit all my videos just to take out the sacred name, and I'm not going to be afraid of saying the sacred name. I'm not going to go to this far extreme and saying it every time I speak the name of the divine. I'm not going to be saying it all the time, like there's some groups out there that says, well, if you don't say it all the time and every time, you're going to hell, or if you don't say it all the time every time, then you're denying God and all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to go that far, and I'm not going to go to the other end of the spectrum and say, well, I'm not going to say it at all. It's not going to come out of my mouth. If you read the scriptures carefully, it says that Elohim, that he wants his name to be known, that he wants his name to be spoken. The only prohibition is not to take it in vain, not to use it flippantly, not to use it sarcastically, not to use it in a curse, not to use it in a derogatory or negative way. Not only that, but not to live your life to whereas you drag God's name and his honor through the mud. And you know what? We may not take his name in vain that often, but I'm telling you, by the way we live, a lot of times we'll drag it through the mud and take it in vain by the way we live, more so than how we verbalize it or articulate it. So I have my own convictions, and I'm convinced of my own way of how to say the name, and I usually say it in the privacy of my own personal prayers, and I believe the name is Yahweh, and I try not to say it on video, but sometimes I'll slip up and say it, but I'm not apologizing for it anymore. I'm not going to apologize for it. And when I'm speaking to Jewish people who don't believe, I won't say the name because I don't want to purposely offend them. Now, if they stumble onto one of my videos and hear it, oh well, because it's not usual that a non-believing Jew is going to be watching my videos, but if they do, they're just going to catch it. But you know what? There's some names that I cringe at. There's some names that people say that I get a little offended at. But at the same time, I don't explode and I don't go all over them because they said it. I don't like the name Jesus Christ. I don't like people saying Jesus Christ. It bothers me. It's kind of like, to me, it's like butchering the name. But you know what? I even though it irks me a little bit, I'm not going to get offended to the point where I'm saying, don't you ever say that, because if you say that, that's a pagan name and all this. It's how the people know him. I know that Messiah's name is Yeshua. I know that, and that's what I say all the time, and that's what I'm comfortable with, Yeshua HaMashiach. But if somebody says Jesus, I know a lot of times they're just in the habit of it. That's how they grew up knowing him. Hard habits, are hard to break, and old habits die hard. And, hopefully, once people know the origins and how Jesus is actually a butchering of the Hebrew, maybe people will start saying Yeshua. But I'm not going to twist people's arm and say, don't you ever say that around me. I'm not going to play those games. I'm not going to play those games, and I'm not going to make these absolute demarcations and just be all fanatical and be all militant about things like that. Because you know what? That puts a wedge and drives people away more so than it does attract people to the Torah, than it attracts people to Yeshua, that it attracts people to Torah observance, than it attracts people to Messianic/Nazari Judaism. You know what? They're already scared enough that we keep the Torah. Why frighten them more by saying, don't you ever say that name, or don't say it this way, or you got to say this and you can't say that? The majority of the time, I will use the English equivalents of God, or the Hebrew of Elohim, or other derivatives that refer to the divine, like Hashem, or Adonai, or El Shaddai, or many of his other titles and names. And I use Yahweh sparingly. I try not to use it on video, but sometimes it just comes out and it slips out. But I'm not going to apologize for that. I used to, I'm not going to do it anymore, because there's nothing wrong with it. The prophecies, if you look at them and really get into them, you will see that one day the name will be restored. One day people will be saying it again. One day we will know what it is. May not be until Mashiach himself comes. I don't know. But there's a lot of good evidence that we should be using the name. Like I said, I'm not going to go to the far end and say, well, that's the only thing you can say. You have to say it and write it all the time, and all your commentaries and everything you say and do. And at I'm not going to go to the other end of the spectrum and say, oh, I'm never going to say it. I'm just not going to do that. I probably stepped on a lot of people's toes, probably made a lot of people mad. I didn't mean to do it on purpose. I'm just letting you guys know where I stand and, about the sacred name and why I choose to say it. Like I said, I'm trying not to, I don't want to be all fanatical and in everybody's face about it. But if you research the scriptures, Yeshua himself said the name. There's a lot of good evidence to say to show that he said the name, and that's probably one of the more reasons why a lot of the Pharisees and a lot of the Jewish people of his time got so upset with him, because he used the name. I don't believe that he used it all the time, like a lot of the sacred namers claim that you have to. But I believe that he said it. That he wasn't bound or constrained by the all of the customs and all the traditions of the Jewish people of that day and age. He came to shake things up. He didn't come to do away with the Torah. He came to show us how to live it. But he came to shake up the man-made traditions and doctrines and customs of men, and the doctrines of men and the doctrines of demons. He came to shake that up and to tear that down. And, as long as a tradition or custom lines up with the Torah, hey, fine, keep it, whatever. Yeshua kept many of the traditions. He kept the order of the Passover Seder, which is a traditional order. He was at the temple celebrating Hanukkah with everybody else, And, anyway, I digress. I'm running out of time here, but I just wanted to throw this one out at you as well. And I hope and pray that you take this video in the right frame of mind and in the right spirit of love and humility in which I mean it. Thanks again for watching. Shalom and Shavua Tov. Bye.